A dramatic change will take place in the US in 2024. And now I'm not talking about the President of the United States, but a change that will take place in Wall Street and beyond to all the securities that are traded in the US. The trade settlement cycle in May 2024 for US securities will be shortened from T+2 to T+1. In this video, we have packed all the latest regulatory intelligence on the implications that this change will have on all the European funds that trade in US securities. As a bonus, we will also see what is the take of European authorities on distributed ledger technologies or DLTs when applied to the infrastructure of financial markets. Let's dive in. If you follow this channel, you know that the story is more or less always the same. There is a change in the regulation on financial services in Europe, which has ultra-territorial effects. It has implications for all the US fund managers who have interest in operating in Europe, and so the industry at global level has to find workarounds for the markets to continue to function properly. This time, the change is taking place in the US, and Europe will have to adjust to this change that takes place and will be introduced in May 2024 to the trade settlement cycle for securities, which will be shortened from the T+2 that is today to T+1. Hang on a minute, I'm talking about securities trade settlement cycle T1 plus 2 plus 1. Are you sure that you know what it is? In the securities trading, T is the moment when a person or an actor who wants to purchase a security and pays the amount that is requested. +1 or +2 or +3 refers to the number of business days that are necessary for the trade to be processed completely and for the proceeds to be paid to the current owner and for the registration of the security in the name of the new owner. And this is called in jargon settlement window or settlement cycle for securities trade. Is it clear now? Let's go back to the video. The goal of the global industry is to achieve a situation where trades that relate to securities are settled instantaneously, the so-called T+0. There are already global markets that operate on T+1, and the US is catching up along with Canada to these markets. Europe still operates on T+2, which reflects the status or reflected the status of the markets a decade ago or so. The issue is for Europe to be able to catch up with the US and get ready to an environment where T+0 is a reality. What are the issues that the multitude of European funds that trade on US securities will face? Those issues are mainly operational on the one end and also legal and regulatory, because there might be conflicts with existing rules under the UCITS directive. The shortened trade settlement cycle to T+1 will apply to the manager of a fund. The investor subscribing into a fund still nowadays is under a T+3 settlement cycle for its subscription or redemption, which means that the manager will receive in 3 days from the subscription the monies that proceeds from the subscription required from him to be able to deploy its strategy. And considering that the settlement cycle to purchase US securities has been shortened, the manager of the fund, of a UCITS for instance, will find itself in a situation where he either has to delay the implementation of the strategy, and that might come with a market risk itself, or else try to anticipate the monies from the subscription received from investors, facing one of the obstacles under the UCITS directive whereby the borrowing is capped at a certain percentage of the assets under management. Similar issues will be faced in the different scenario of the subscription, because the manager manager will have to hold liquidity for an additional day, and once again there are rules under UCITS which limit the liquidity that can be held into a fund. Europe had a very instantaneous reaction to this announcement made by the US authorities, and another piece of good news comes with the fact that the SEC has not attached yet, we would say, any penalty to the new settlement cycle of T+1. This doesn't mean, though, that we can act thinking that the new settlement cycle doesn't exist. Many have voiced the opportunity for distributed ledger technologies or DLT technologies to fill this gap and make T+0 also a reality. And if you want to know more about how DLT is already used in the fund ecosystem in Europe and in the UK, we have linked an article in the description of this video. When we talk about European regulation and new technology, most often than not, we might hear this term technology or technological neutrality. That means that European authorities don't have a say on the technology that will be prevailing for the management and the functionality of a certain market, for instance. European authorities have only to create the conditions for these new technologies to be tested safely and for the market to decide which one will have to prevail. For a few years now, we had a DLT pilot regime in Europe whose scope is essentially to test DLT technologies in certain infrastructures of the financial markets in Europe. The guidelines, the perimeter for this pilot regime is essentially to ensure, on the one hand, legal certainty of these new mechanisms and the operations that come with them, and also a protection of investors to the extent that this will not have to incur losses for the only reason of the new technology being used in a certain market infrastructure. For what concerns the trade settlement cycle, DLT might be a very good candidate, and it might change as well the existing paradigm where there are different entities that look after or take care of the trade and post-trade activity. This might not be a reality with DLT because realistically today the reason why we had different entities looking after these different phases of the trade settlement cycle was to ensure competitivity and efficiency in the market, and it might not be the case with the DLT, which will sign a complete change and paradigm shift in the securities trade settlement. You might think that it's too futuristic. I'm telling you that it's not. In Luxembourg, which is one of the European domiciles with the best standards for the fund industry, it is already possible, according to a circular of the local regulator, to power the shareholder register using DLT technologies. There is more to come on European regulation for sure, and if you made it to this part of the video, I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit like to this video. Stay tuned.